Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's my number 12 team in my 2025, wow, it's 2025 already, deep dive series, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are the most waiting for the wheels to fall off team. This makes no sense that they're good. They shouldn't be this good team. They really, from the head coaching perspective, from how they design their coaching staff, to the quarterback, Baker Mayfield, who all of a sudden, since he came here, is now one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league. Mike Evans doesn't get old. Tristan Wirfs just keeps getting better somehow. The players that they're drafting on day 2 and day 3 are starting to show up and actually excel, and they're giving them time to excel, and it's working. But there's just something about them that I'm sitting here waiting and going this could be the worst team if they really wanted to be, but they're somehow borderline top 10 at the same time. Now, is it just from a culture perspective? Maybe. Is it because Baker Mayfield is so he's so unpredictable that it could all just go wrong tomorrow? Maybe. Is it because their offensive line is just built of the most country bumpkin looking whites who at any point in time you feel can get canceled on social media for posting the wrong thing? Probably. Is it Vita Vea that if he gets hurt you feel the entire defensive line might fall apart? I think that to a degree is a thing also. So it's tough, man. It's tough, but I still think they're looking really good somehow all at the same time as I say that. And you have the coaching staff here that is one of the most unique coaching staffs in the entire league, and I'll get to explaining that, because you have Todd Bowles. What makes this coaching staff so unique is the fact that Todd Bowles, I believe, is the only head coach, I could be wrong, that's also got the official title of coordinator next to his name. He is the head coach / defensive coordinator of this team. I don't know if there's any other head coach in the league that has that /. We have coaches that call plays. We have coaches that oversee one side of the ball maybe a little bit more than others. But this is really the only situation that I can think of offhand where this is the case. Maybe Kyle Shanahan has that designation. I don't think he does, though. And I think that's why it's easy for me to rank Todd Bowles at 19th. It's the highest I've ranked him since I've done this series for the last couple of years. I think he's proven himself that he's at least a head coach that can create a positive winning culture. Because to take over from what they had with Arians and Brady, and then to maintain a level of success here, sure, the division hasn't been great, or say what you want about it. This all could have fallen apart. And especially from a defensive perspective, he was able to keep the defense strong. He was able to bring in the right people on the offense side of the ball, to the point where there's been so much turnover at the offensive coordinator position. Josh Grizzard, I think, is the third offensive coordinator in the last 3 years for this team. He comes in at 17th for me. And the reason he comes in 17th is because I'm starting to trust the process here a little bit with how they're just rolling in offensive coaches. I think, Tom Moore, you see there in the bottom left, notorious for his work back in the day with some great talents. And I think that helps. I think he brings a level of experience that can help Josh Grizzard maintain what Liam Cohen had and what Dave Canales had, and et cetera, et cetera. I think it's going to be a real test, though, for Baker, is that now he has to get comfortable and build a chemistry with yet another offensive coordinator who's kind of just learning on the job for the most part. But from you look at the defensive side here, Larry Foote is probably the one that's been groomed to be a defensive coordinator the most here out of everybody, I would say. It'll be interesting to see how much, if Todd Bowles eventually does give up that defensive coordinator designation. I just think because it does something for whoever ends up getting the role, I think from a perception point of view. But also, it does prevent Todd Bowles from being what a great head coach truly is, and that's the CEO of the team, sort of overseeing everything, focusing more on culture building and everything. But he's so invested in the defense side of the ball. I think it's, the defense has a lot of success because of that. but it does lessen the impact of the defensive staff overall. And it lessens, I think, his impact overall from an overarching coaching perspective, because he can't be as dialed in to what the offense is doing, for example, and from a scheme perspective, what he wants for the overarching overall team strategy. You know, the aggressiveness. Like he can dictate obviously a little bit, but it does put him in a position where he's kind of working himself into the ground a bit. I don't think he can be really all the way there and all the way present on the defensive side of the ball because of that. And there is this wondering of when the wheels are going to fall off for Todd Bowles, because he's lucked out at quarterback with Baker Mayfield. He's lucked out that we haven't seen a significant drop-off from Mike Evans, for example, that they've drafted well on the offensive side of the ball the last couple of seasons as well, with, Bucky Irving's a great example of that. Developing players well on the offensive side of the ball, so he's lucked into those situations. Maybe it's not luck. Maybe I'm not giving him enough credit, but just from an outsider's perspective here and just seeing how these other head coaches operate with their teams, I think that him spreading himself as thin as he does, giving himself such a focus on one side of the ball, has hurt this team in terms of what their ceiling could be. Because yes, they keep winning the division every year, even with after Brady was gone and with Baker Mayfield, and Baker's been really good. However, I don't know that I think that they're one of the few teams where I'm like, this is the best they're going to be, is like the 12th best team in the league, because of just this role of Todd Bowles. I think if Todd Bowles gave a little bit more, like Mike Caldwell, for example, it would be a great candidate from my perspective to take an official defensive coordinator role so he can take a step back a little bit. But that's all just sort of hypotheticals really at this point, because I don't see Todd Bowles ever doing that. And I do wonder at what point does the organization look at him and be like, okay, you've gotten us as far as you can get us. Sort of what we saw with Chicago and Lovie Smith, or Cincinnati and Marvin Lewis, or Tennessee saw that with Mike Vrabel. And there is a trend there where it's defensive coaches. How far can a defensive coach truly take you? Can he get you to where you need to be? Can he get you to that next level? Or is the constant turnover at the offensive coordinator position, the offensive coaching staff, for example? Because the other thing is you're going to see position coaches get poached by other teams throughout this. Quarterback coaches, especially on this team, if Baker continues that success, they're going to be hot candidates every single year coming off of his staff. So you can't have that much turnover from a scheme perspective, from a quarterback and offensive coordinator chemistry perspective, and expect the success to be sustained, because you have all these other teams now in your division, like Carolina and New Orleans, who have committed to offensive coaches and high-level ones. Kellen Moore and Dave Canales. Like these were like higher-level offensive minds when they were considered for the job and hired. So as they're growing, this is how you get surpassed by these other teams. It's like by an incremental level. Because as you've plateaued, the way that it feels that Tampa Bay might have plateaued, because let's be honest, how many of you guys legitimately see them having more success overall in terms of playoff success than what they've had? It just seems like they're stuck in this tier, and I wonder how much they're going to stick with the Todd Bowles way of doing things. Because I've said notoriously I had him and Dennis Allen as my two worst head coaches. Just last year, I think. Last year, I think it was him and Dennis Allen my two bomb coaches. I had to put him up this high because, the success can't be denied. But this is as high as I can ever put him, because I feel like that this is the ceiling for him. He's a top 20 head coach, but he's not particularly going to be spectacular for the overall team. So, I don't know. You guys let me know what you guys think of what Todd Bowles is doing here, and if
you guys think it is sustainable. If you think this is like a Mike Tomlin type of a thing, or like a Pete Carroll type of a thing that's going on here, or if it's just more like a Brian Flores thing with Miami. I think it can go. It's like, I feel like it can go both ways here, and I do lean more towards the Brian Flores Miami thing than I do the high level of success and sustained success we see from Pete Carroll in Seattle and Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh.
Point in the video where you leave an ad break in here, but I don't have any ads. But if you like and you subscribe, I might one day soon. So let's get back to the video.
Now talk about a guy that's been completely proving himself and really spit in the face of a lot of the doubters, and that's Baker Mayfield, who's coming in for me as my 6th best quarterback in the league this year. The guy, from adjusting to new schemes, building chemistry with teammates so quickly, the adaptability and the willingness to learn, and what he showed in this progress is that he is as coachable as it gets, which I think was a huge red flag on Baker for a while, is that he wasn't the most coachable guy. That he had a bit of an attitude issue. He had a bit of an ego issue. He was a little bit too big for his britches type of a thing. But maybe leaving Cleveland and bouncing from Carolina and the Rams humbled him. I think there's a huge possibility of that. Now, Baker's game that made him successful in college was that he was very aggressive. And as you can see here, the aggressiveness has a double-edged sword on him. Because he did have 22 big-time throws, but he also had 24 turnover-worthy plays. He had more turnover-worthy plays than he had big-time throws. That needs to get dialed down. Now, how much of that is him building with the team? How much is that him trusting these wide receivers and these weapons? I think there's a lot of that. I think the great thing about Baker is he's a very balanced thrower. He has really great arm talent at all 3 levels. He understands how to effectively use each individual talent that he's had, especially since he's come to Tampa. He's had his best years here in Tampa, with Mike Evans and Godwin and McMillan and Otten and, you name them. He's had a really good play action game. The one thing that stands out for me is how well he did against the blitz last year, where he was able to identify the blitz. He was getting the shifts with the offensive line. He was calling the right protections from the backfield and the tight ends, letting them stay behind and everything. He was so effective at doing that pre-snap that it took his game to another level. And now how much of that was him getting coached up by Liam Cohen? I guess we'll find out this year with how Grizzard sets things up compared to what Liam Cohen sets up. And I guess you're also going to see it from how Trevor Lawrence responds with Liam Cohen now as his head coach. But everything you saw from Baker last year was tremendous IQ on the pre-snap, and that showed that he made a great commitment to the film study aspect. Getting in there, studying the opponent, and really upping the communication levels and being confident in the communication. I think that's another thing too and that's a huge aspect of Baker's game, is playing with a level of confidence. That's why the ball can be put in harm's way as often as it does, but he also has a 78.7 adjusted completion percentage because he's putting the ball on target more often than not. It's just that aggressiveness and that confidence he has in his game will cause him to make questionable decisions throughout a game and throughout a season. But to identify the blitz, pick up the blitz, and then know, based on the other routes that are happening in the play, who your hot receiver is now, and to be able to find them immediately, be accurate with the ball, put it on them, allow them to get the run after the catch. He was really great with that. And he was one of the better quarterbacks against pressure as well. Because even when that wasn't identified and when they kind of did get home on him a bit, he was still able to escape the pocket. He was still able to get the ball downfield to his receivers. Now, he does have great receivers. He has an all-timer in Mike Evans. He's got a tremendous number 2 when healthy in Chris Godwin. They've done a good job of mixing in some of these younger guys. Getting him a Emeka Egbuka, first-round pick this year, should help elevate his game. They've always given him a good running game with, whether it's Rashad White or, whoever, Bucky Irving, and before that, whoever. He understands how to use those guys He understands how the matchups against the defense week to week benefit each individual player or maybe don't benefit an individual player. So the one aspect of his game that seemed to be lacking in Cleveland, he has now acquired, which is why I'm so confident to be able to put him as this type of a quarterback. Now, do I think that he is going to be in a position this year to be a true MVP candidate? I don't know, which is tough to say for a quarterback that you rank in the top 6, because generally in that sense, it's a quarterback award almost every year. I just don't know that I don't know that he's going to get the credit because he's got so much going on. I think the defense is going to be something. And I don't know if the team's going to have that much success, like I said before, overall, because of the ceiling they have. Now, there is a world where the constant changing of coordinators around him, offensive schemes around him, philosophies that he's experienced in his career catches up to him. And that another guy, this is like his 6th different offensive play caller in the last 6 years or something. It's absurd what he's had to go through. That doesn't dictate to sustainability in terms of high level performance. Now, if the mental aspect of the game has truly stuck with him and it's truly something he's acquired and it wasn't just the magic work of Liam Cohen last season, then he's fine. He'll never be worse than the 10th best quarterback in the league from any given week. Because the arm talent's always going to be, the arm talent's there. He's not aged out or anything like that. Like, he has a history of it's like he has shoulder injuries and surgeries and all that stuff that he's been going through like Drew Brees. The arm strength's going to be there. The eyes are going to be there. The aggressiveness, the athleticism is all there. So he's turned himself into the complete package. You do worry about Mike Evans, perhaps. Maybe he's fallen off a bit. Then, he has to find another security blanket out there. But that's really trying to figure out where this could all go wrong for him. So I don't think it necessarily could at this point. Like, he's a 4,000-yard passer. He's going to hover around 40 touchdowns. The turnovers are obviously going to be a concern for you, but you don't get the high level of positives that Baker Mayfield delivers without risking the negatives. It's very Brett Favre-ish, Brett Favre-esque in what Baker Mayfield has been doing the last couple seasons and where he's really at his best. Like with Favre, you didn't want him to play it safe, because if Brett Favre was playing it safe and he was thinking too much, he was overanalyzing things, post-snap especially, then he wasn't going to be effective. Baker's the same way. You don't want Baker to be hyper-analyzing post-snap. You want him to trust what he saw, you want him to trust his arm, and you want him to try and put it on a guy and fit in those tight windows and play like this bat-out-hell gunslinger type, because that's where he's at his best. So you have to allow him a long leash. You have to accept the fact that there might be a quarter worth of just what the hell are you doing out there moments, because that's the only way you're going to get 3 quarters of him just picking defenses apart, putting the ball downfield, just playing out of his mind good. So you have to take the good and the bad here. He's not like some of these other quarterbacks in the league where you can reel them in a bit and still get a high level of success. Like I think about Joe Burrow in that way, where Joe Burrow's the best quarterback in the league, but he doesn't need to be hyper aggressive like Baker does in order to have a season-long sustained success. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. It's registering with everyone, because it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. He is playing with the 13th ranked weapons group, which it's got some really good pieces in here. The concern is, I don't know of the best guys who you would put the proverbial it's only up from here type of designation to. Like Mike Evans at this point in his career, great player still, gets a 90 grade for me. Like, he's an elite level guy. I worry that as he keeps getting older, eventually the production's going to start going down. Is he Larry Fitzgerald and it's going to be sustainable, or is he going to be, Randy Moss and it's just going to disappear one day after being there in spades? Contested catch rate, still fantastic. He knows how to use his size. He executes extremely well still in the intermediate level. Still a really good down the field deep threat as well. Doesn't do anything in like the screen game or anything. That's not his game. He's a guy who's going to go and he's going to use his physicality. He's going to use his sneaky athleticism and sneaky good route running to just dominate defenses and force them to have to double him, to force them to roll safeties over the top. But then he's going to be able to out jump and outmaneuver these guys down the field. And when you got a quarterback like Baker Mayfield, especially, who's not afraid to put the ball into those tight windows, and when you have a guy with the wingspan of Mike Evans and the length and the catch radius, it creates for a real great opportunity. And the other sneaky thing about Mike Evans is what they're able to do with him is also something that the Arizona Cardinals were able to do with Larry Fitzgerald later in his career, which was they were able to put him in the slot a lot more, where he could use his size advantage, create these weird mismatches, but because he still had a really good athleticism, because he still had really reliable hands, they were able to use him as like this oversized slot guy to force the safeties to have to play within the numbers and down towards the line of scrimmage, which then opened up opportunities for the more faster, speedy types that they have, the more athletic guys. And when you look at the guys that they've added here, like they have Chris Godwin, who sort of played that role out, but they add in first-round pick Emeka Egbuka, who to me is just, they're preparing him to be more the Chris Godwin replacement. Of course, he was an 81% slot receiver last year at Ohio State University. Just executed really well down the field. He was a sneaky good contested catch guy, reliable with his hands. His route running and his ability to create separation and his quick twitch ability, that's really great. Now, you put him in the slot. You draft him because he's going to be a primary slot guy. But I think the ability to flip him and Mike Evans, make Egbuka this outside threat with Evans in the slot, it's going, like I said, it's going to force these safeties to play closer to the line of scrimmage to account for Mike Evans, who they're going to have to double. And it's going to give Egbuka these outside the numbers one-on-one opportunities without having to worry about a safety rolling over the top like he would have at Ohio State, which is why playing in the slot worked out so much better for him there. And he might end up becoming like a really sneaky outside threat because of that weird combination they have. And they also have Chris Godwin, who can play that role as well in the middle. So Egbuka, though primary slot guy, drafted as a slot guy, he took up for JSN when JSN left Ohio State. In this mishmash of guys here, he's got a real chance to expand his game, expand it slowly, but expand it in a way where it's always going to be advantageous for him. Because these teams are going to be so focused on not letting Mike Evans and Chris Godwin beat them from these weird spots that the safeties are going to be so much more focused on that. It's going to create open opportunities. And the other one it's going to open up for is Tez Johnson, who, even though right now Jalen McMillan much higher on the depth chart, I just feel like Tez Johnson brings this, he's super tiny. So for him to have like this over-the-top impact at this level, it's just not a thing. He's going to be that guy who, when you have the safeties playing inside, closer to the hashes, he's the guy that you're going to just hope can beat a guy outside and then lay it out for him and let him run underneath it. In single coverage, hope you catch a guy in trail technique and you just lead him out down the field. Or he's somebody that you run a quick little screen game with and he sort of weaves in and out of everybody like Darren Sproles. He becomes basically wide receiver version of Darren Sproles in this offense, which he can be a fun little piece to have, and he can be extremely effective and a really scary weapon for your offense. It's just not something you can use all the time because at his size, he'll get beat up by bigger sized corners, let alone linebackers and safeties that are going to come down the field screaming at him like a Justin Reed or Trevon Merrick, just thinking of his division off the top of my head alone. Jesse Bates, for example. Just imagine those guys just screaming down at him as he's trying to run across the middle. And that sort of instant contact, that's just not sustainable for him. But you have Jalen McMillan, who can come in, play an outside receiver role. They do have Trey Palmer also. You know, Ryan Miller, Sterling Shepard still sort of sneaking around in there. So they have a very balanced and diverse wide receiver room where they can create these opportunities for these, especially these top three guys that they have, that other teams just don't have, because Mike Evans is so reliable. Chris Godwin, when he's healthy, is still so good. Igbuka can be used in a versatile way when Mike Evans can play in the slot. Then you got Cade Otton, the tight end, who's another guy who, you know, sneaky good. Especially here where he's the fourth, maybe fifth option in the passing game that a defense is going to have to worry about. He's going to have some real good opportunities here. 50% of his snaps are taking traditional tight end. I expect that to remain the same, if not increase a little bit with all these additions they've made. Now, he does have some drop issues that have to be addressed. But I think as just a, you know, between the hashes threat, you know, that traditional receiving tight end threat, he's going to be drawing some really favorable matchups from the opposing defenses that I think he's going to be able to really take advantage of here. As long as everyone else stays healthy and sustains everything, they could have some packages put together for Cade Otton that could be, you know, get him into the end zone way more than 4 times, I'll tell you that. Because when you get into that red zone situation, who's everyone going to be focused on? If you roll out with 3 receivers and a tight end, you roll 13, like, there you go. You know, you roll out 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, Evans, Godwin, Ibuka, Cade Otton, and then Bucky Irving. Cade Otton is the least of the defense's worries in that scenario, and that's going to open up huge opportunities for him. You know, Bucky Irving, he really speaks for himself at this point. What a rookie season. Just probably as an all-around weapon was as good as anybody. You know, he's not Saquon Barkley, he's not quite Bijan Robinson, but he really filled a tremendous role, a really balanced role that I wasn't expecting him to be able to fill. And that's why him and Rachaad White, this is the 4th top 5 running back group here for me. You know, Bucky Irving showed a lot in his rookie campaign. He showed an incredible balance to his game of being able to run outside. You know, as a one-cut back, he was able to use some power, use some speed on the outside. He was doing everything right. Getting the ball in the end zone, 5.4 yards a carry, making guys miss, ball security. He did it just under 200 carries, which is a really good spot for him to be in, because then he can throw in like 45, 50 catches on the season. And he's just in a 250, 260 touch season. That's sustainable for a long time. So, you know, him getting, man, just thinking of some of the highlights that you can get from a guy like Irving. He, you know, making linebackers miss, forcing missed tackles from linebackers and defensive ends even. You know, getting to that third level and outrunning guys to the spot, you know, to the corner of the pylon. He did these things with the precision and the IQ and the patience of a 7-8 year vet. That's really difficult to find, especially in these young backs who are so worried about not being a detriment to a team, and they're so concerned about, you know, I don't want to lose yards. I don't want to be the guy that loses yards. At least get positive yards. And they'll make a lot of poor decisions. They'll run impatiently and not let holes develop, not let space develop. Bucky Irving did not do that. He's got a great comment also in Rachaad White, who sort of just had his starting job stolen away from him. But Rachaad White was a pretty good back. His impact now that Bucky Irving's here is going to be obviously much less. But as just a rotational back, he's a really great rotational backer. They also have Sean Tucker, who had some really sneaky games last year. I think the game against New Orleans was the one where he had like 190 yards rushing or something like that in that game. Could have been more than that. But he was always somebody when he came out of college. I think he went undrafted. He was viewed as like a top level back too. And, stuff happened. He didn't go, as people thought it would in the draft process for him. But he ended up here, and every time he's been called upon, he's been really good as well. So this running game being the way that it is, this is only going to continue to help the offensive line. It's going to help the receivers because the passing game now, how do you, as a defense, figure out what you're going to do personnel-wise? Are you stacking the box and playing one-on-ones on the outside with this weapons group and with Baker Mayfield, who is going to identify your blitzes, who's going to know exactly where your robber is going to be, where that linebacker is going to roll out to or space out to, where the stunts are coming from the defensive line? He's going to know all these things ahead of time because he's going to study it ahead of time. What he did last year, he's going to know more times than not what you're coming with. So to drag a guy into the box with a play action because this running game's so effective, but then if you play everyone out, they're just going to turn around and hand the ball off to Bucky Irving. He's going to get 7-8 yards. So, especially when his plus 15, he had 14 carries of 15 or more yards, which is a pretty high number. Most of the time you'll see guys, that's like elite back level. We'll see when we get to guys like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. You saw it with Bijan Robinson. He's up there with those types of runs. So you're going to need to commit somebody to the box, and then what are you going to play? Bump coverage on the outside? This is going to be a really tough team. This is a really tough offense to fight against. It's real tough. The only thing is the question marks on the offensive line that you may be like, I don't know about that. From a pass blocking perspective, they might be the best. They're just quite not the best. I got them second, third-ish. Just outside of being number one. From a run blocking perspective, they're vomit-inducing, which does in turn kind of affect how truly effective the running game can be. But also the running back is so good, and because the passing game is going to be so good, it's going to allow these guys to maybe grow a little bit more, play with a little bit more confidence from a run blocking perspective. But it all starts with the pass blocking, obviously, and it starts with franchise left tackle Tristan Wirfs, who comes in 95 grade as a pass blocker, 0 sacks allowed, took 8 penalties, allowed 12 pressures on 638 snaps. No sacks allowed. At least accredited to him. What else could you ask for? You combine this with Baker Mayfield and having a great receiving group, your pass game is going to be super effective here. Because you can leave this left tackle out on the island. He's going to dominate whatever pass rush you send at him. He's going to be smart enough to know when to bump in, when to kick out. He's going to communicate well with the guard next to him. And he's super athletic. Tristan Wirfs, that was the thing about him when he came out of Iowa, Missouri. It's Iowa. It was Iowa. I always get Iowa and Missouri confused. Very similar looking with their logos and all that crap. But anyway, I'm pretty sure it was Iowa. Don't shoot messenger. It's been a while. There's a lot of players on my mind. But that was the thing. What happened when he came out and he was drafted originally to play right tackle opposite Donovan Smith, which was you're getting this high level athlete who's so athletic that from a foundational standpoint, once he sort of connects everything and learns how to harness that, he's going to be a fantastic player in the league. And he got it right away. Then he moves to left tackle, and the fear after that becomes, okay, now it's kind of like wiping with your other hand. And it was just like fish to water. Boom. So from a football IQ standpoint, he just gets it. From an athleticism standpoint, he's able to connect the mind to the body perfectly. He knows how to identify, the pass rusher he's facing. He knows all that guy's moves. He knows the counters to all that guy's moves. He knows exactly when they're going to go for it, and he's there every single time. You can watch him do it. Fake spin move, he's there for it. His flat out spin move, there for it. Swim move, there for it. Combination stunts, he's there for all of it. And he's communicating to his right guard. Now in the run game, surprisingly, he sort of just hasn't been what you would expect. You'd expect him to be like a super high level run blocker as well. He sort of fell into like a Laramie Tunsil, Andrew Thomas situation where he just didn't, the run blocking didn't meet the level. Not saying he's bad or anything, but just didn't meet the level. And then you got, Ben Bredesen next to him, a veteran guy next to him. Now, I see Sua Opeta, who for some reason keeps getting jobs. Elijah Klein is in there. Jake Majors, primarily I would say a backup center. But if there's a world where, Bredesen struggles, I could see Jake Majors coming in, and then I think you get another little boost there in terms of your pass blocking. You got second-year guard Graham Barton, who, he's one of those guys where he was going to have the growing pains last year. You just kind of knew that was going to happen because he played all 5 positions in college. And I think in his last year in college, he played primarily at tackle. And the idea was he was going to come in and play guard, and then he'd get drafted here, and he got drafted to play center. Because, they lost Ryan Jensen, and, they had Hainsey in there who got hurt, I believe, last year. So he was thrust into being the starting center. So there was going to be some growing pains there. And him being sort of the quarterback of the offensive line, that's a learning curve, especially at the pro level. Baker did such a great job individually that it'll be interesting to see how Graham Barton advances that aspect of his game to really meld him and Baker together. Because I think when a quarterback has a really great center who's really smart, really confident, able to make the calls on the line, able to make the adjustments himself, that allows the quarterback to get raised to another level as well. We saw it with Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday. That's, I think, the perfect example. Even with Jeff Saturday and Aaron Rodgers. There's just this, when you have that type of chemistry with a high-level quarterback and a high-level center, it does take the offense to a whole other level. It's a really underappreciated position for what it can bring to an offense. We'll see how Graham Barton advances in that sense. He's got Cody Mock next to him, who was drafted, I believe, the year before that, who kind of struggled early on, and last year it clicked. 657 pass blocking snaps, gave up 2 sacks, only 2 penalties, gave up 18 pressures, but it was a drastic improvement from what we saw before. And he was taking on some of the better guys. He was really doing a great job identifying the stunts, and he didn't have Tristan Wirfs next to him to make up for some deficiencies. I'm not taking any away from Luke Gadecki, we'll get to. But he really stepped up, and he really showed that he can stand alone. And in this progression that you're getting out of him is a tremendous sign for the long-term growth that you were expecting to have from Mock. He came into the league with potential, not facing that high level of competition. So the speed of the game, the athleticism he was going to be seeing was going to be more so than he was used to. So you knew the struggles were coming. It's sort of the same thing with, like we just talked about, Graham Barton. You kind of knew the struggles were coming because it was a little newer for him than it would be for most rookies to be in the position that he was in. But he performed really well. He even performed pretty well, in the run game. It's C+ zone, C- gap. They kind of run a balanced offense in that sense, but by no means a liability. And it was another aspect of his game that you see this and you go like, he was average, but he was better than what he had been up to this point in his career as well. So it's just a really good sign of really strong team building and committing to players and putting them in positions to succeed and, making sure that they're taught properly. Because, Cody Mock has Luke Gadecki next to him, the right tackle, who, just like Cody Mock, kind of just recently came into his own. He was sort of this, type of a player who, one thing that really killed his pass blocking grade is the fact he took 14 penalties. Now, when you look at it and you go, he's got Tristan Wirfs to the left. So they're not going to put their best pass rusher on Wirfs. They're going to pick on the right tackle. So him taking that many penalties is almost expected, but he only gave up 2 sacks. So, 2 sacks, 14 penalties. Make of that as you want. If he cuts down on the penalties, focuses more on his technique, hand placement, trusts what's going on around him a little bit more, understands the pass rushing routes that the guys are going to be taking in coordination to where the offensive line is going to need to be shifting to. Once that starts to click to him a lot more, you could have one of the better left and right tackle pass blocking combinations on the team, and then you mix that in with Cody Mauch there. That right side of the line is going to be very good. And also he comes in, he's probably their best run blocker as well. From a gap perspective, like elite level abilities, not so much in zone. And the thing is that they run more of a balanced zone to gap blocking scheme. So it does kind of stymie his ability to be truly playing at his best, if that makes sense. Because you're putting him in positions where he's just not as comfortable in the run game. So if they went to more of a gap scheme, if they committed more to the gap scheme, like over 50% of the time, 55, 56% of the time, 55 to 60% of the time gap, then I think that would help the run game a lot more, and I think it would up everyone's contributions a lot more as well. But the right side of the field is where they're going to be really focused on running the ball. It's where their best guys are at. You look from a depth perspective also with Gadecki and Wirfs, there's really nobody on the horizon that I'd be concerned about at all taking their spot from them. Charlie Hack, Lawrence Metz, they're not. It does give pause, because if you lose one of these guys, that does hurt significantly, more so than it would if you lost Graham Barton or whatever in training camp, because then Jake Majors comes in, you lose a little bit in the run game, but you'd actually gain something in the pass game. So there is a little bit of something there from an interior offensive line perspective. You at least have Majors, who can be, I think, a good contributor, even though he's a rookie. From a tackle perspective, the depth's not there. So these guys need to perform on a much more consistent basis. But Gadecki's going to be the one that gets all the help also. So he's not going to be stuck on these islands the way that Tristan Wirfs is, because Tristan Wirfs can handle it. He's going to be the one that gets Cody Mauch helping him out. He's going to be the one that gets the running back that's going to chip the end. He's going to be the one that gets the max protection from, Payne Durham or whoever. So I'm not as concerned as I would be, because this overall, the offensive line, I think they can only get better from a run blocking perspective, and I think that hopefully they can find a rhythm there, and as the running back room gets better and more confident and more experienced, it'll help them out as well, put them in more positions to succeed, help them with their angles, running backs hitting the right holes, etc., etc. But the pass game is going to be so strong that you hope that it causes teams to have to not play so many guys in the box, come with you with a 6-man box, and then it makes the matchups a lot easier to identify for the offensive line in the run blocking scheme. It just makes more room for more success. So as long as they stay focused on staying strong in the pass blocking thing, you can make up for the deficiencies they're going to have in terms of being a run blocking group. So overall, it's my 4th ranked offense in the league coming into this year. 4th best passing game. They're 11th in run offense. 17th offensive coordinator, kind of right smack dab in the middle. So if they can improve on the offensive line, the run game, there's no reason they wouldn't be flirting with being the best offense in the entire league with all the pieces that they have in play right now.
Now moving on to the defensive side of the ball, and this is a defense that there's so many defenses like it in a sense where there's a couple of really great players there, but the scheme is so good that it sort of hides the deficiencies that a majority of the players have from an overall individual talent perspective. And it's really apparent here that they have really good role players as well, and they execute those role players perfectly in this scheme. It starts with the defensive line.
It's a very average group. Got some depth to it for sure. Sneaky amounts of depth here. But you're still sort of just sitting there and going, okay, your high-level talents are Yaya Diaby and Vita Vea. And everyone else is sort of just like part of this everlasting rotation. right? Like everyone else is kind of like a situational player. But Yaya Diaby is your all-purpose, 3-down edge player. He was 11th in pass rush win percentage last year. Only had 6 sacks, 65 pressures though. It's one of those things where he was winning so often, getting pressure on the quarterback on so many of his snaps. Eventually the sacks are going to come. You know, it's more likely that if you're getting pressures that eventually the results come. It's like there's a saying in soccer where, you know, you shoot the ball, you know, you're not scoring. But if you keep shooting, they say it's like ketchup, like the glass bottle of ketchup. You hold it upside down, you know, you're patting it, nothing's coming out, and then all of a sudden it just pours out, and it pours out everywhere. That's the way it is when you're an edge rusher in the NFL. Is as long as you're getting pressures, getting pressure on the quarterback, eventually the sack numbers are just going to follow. So I'm looking at Yaya Diaby and I'm going, he's 11th in pass rush win percentage, but he's only gained 6 sacks. What went wrong? He was just putting the quarterback in position, guys were running away, and other people were benefiting from his work, is what that says to me. Which, if you look at how I graded him last year, I wasn't that high on him, but he really showed up last season. And he showed great improvement on both sides of the ball. Because then he comes in, and he's 3rd in stops percentage among all edge players in the run game. So what that tells me is that he's making smart decisions, identifying the run in short yardage situations really well, and he's becoming a sure tackler. Now, an 11.5% missed tackle rate, for a linebacker position, you'd be like wanting to throw up all over yourself. But from an edge player, it's one of the better missed tackle percentages amongst like all the ones that actually play on a consistent level, because there is so much of a commitment to the passing game. There's so much of just, you want to beat the guy that you have, and you have only so many options to do it. So by the time you beat him, you got to make quick decisions then on how to get to the ball carrier. And he did that as well as anybody did last year. One of the better run defending ends in the league. So he's bringing a lot of balance to you. And then from the interior perspective, you have Vita Vea, who probably the second best nose tackle in the league next to Dexter Lawrence. He was 13th in pass rush win percentage. He had 7 sacks last season. Majority of his snaps came in the B gap. Again, just he knows how to use his size. He knows how to use his strength. He knows how to use his athleticism to be an elite level nose tackle, constantly facing double teams from the center and the guard. Because that's the big thing about nose tackles that play his role, him and Dexter Lawrence, which is why what they do is so much more impressive. Because they're having these like 3 tech, 4 eye tech type numbers from a perspective where they're constantly facing double teams, where their role is really to be like a just space eater. But because he's so strong, he's so athletic, and his football IQ he's so quick off the ball, it makes him so effective as a pass rusher. And it makes him even more effective in the run game. You know, he was 23rd in stops percentage. But how many opportunities is he going to get to make a stop as an interior defensive lineman if you're facing double teams? And in a lot of cases, if they're running an inside play, like an inside zone play or something, he might be facing a triple team from the guard, the center, and a fullback, and an up back, or an H-back, or something. Someone crashing down. So a 9.8% missed tackle rate, when so many of what he's doing of those 27 tackles is reaching out with one arm and snatching a guy by the collar. I mean, it can't be understated. You know, is he the best run stuffer? No. Is he the best pass rusher for the interior? No. He's not Dexter Lawrence. He's not Chris Jones. But he can be such a dominant player, especially when you can mix and match all the players around him. That will then open up opportunities for him to be able to be effective. And that's the one thing that this group has, is they got guys who can come in and plug in every single situation to fully enhance what this defensive line can be. Now, like I said, because Diaby and Vita Vea are really the only ones that have this true elite 3-down upside, it does lower the ranking of everyone involved. Because you have Logan Hall and Kalijah Cansey, who are sort of polar opposites of one another. Logan Hall is like this 300-pound, athletic, hasn't really developed the pass rush moves, but he knows how to use his size to his advantage, playing more of a 3-4 I-Tech role. Kalijah Cansey was sort of cursed with the undersized interior defensive lineman out of Pitt, Aaron Donald comparison coming out, which was incredibly unfair that he had to face that, because chances of him being that were very low, and he sort of is the player that I think a lot of people projected him to be. Almost completely ineffective in the run game because of his lack of size and his lack of his just lack of length, lack of size, ability to fight off the double teams in that situation. It's just not there. He doesn't have that. But from a pass rushing perspective, he's able to just outmaneuver and out athletic a lot of the lower end guards in the league. So if you get him in the right matchup, he's going to cause some little bit of chaos there in the B gap. But then you got Greg Gaines, who is this high-level run defender, who you can sub in for Kalijah Cansey on these early downs and short yardage situations. Adam Gotsis can play like an undersized interior defensive lineman role, from a run game perspective. So Kalijah Cansey will be allowed to sort of sit in his specialized area, which is just being a pass rusher. Now, obviously, Logan Hall, Kalijah Cansey, I think Logan Hall is a first-round pick. They might have traded out of the first round. He was the first pick of the second round, Logan Hall. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the expectations of these guys are obviously a lot higher than what they're giving you. They're kind of are combined what you were hoping they'd be as one individual player when you drafted them. But it is what it is. I don't think they're necessarily these detriments or these anchors to the defensive line. Then they brought in Hassan Reddick, who, from a personality standpoint, I would question. I would. But, just coming in, being a situational pass rusher, straight up pass rusher from the outside, fine. He's a really good veteran presence. He's got a history of playing really well the last couple of seasons, minus the last year. So that's going to be something to watch for sure. I think him coming in, being a number 2 to Diaby and being probably the number 3 guy that a defensive line and offensive coordinator is going to be worried about is going to help his game, certainly in those pass rush situations. But they did draft 2 edge rushers. They lost David Walker for the season. David Walker's had some balance to his game, but the better one by my estimation, at least immediately, was Elijah Roberts. And him and Chris Braswell in particular, they're going to be the ones breathing down Hassan Reddick's neck a little bit. They're both better in the run game than Reddick's going to be. And I think Reddick's at this point in his career where he's probably just going to be like, it's fine, just put me in when you need me to rush the passer. I don't want to get dirty. I don't want to get my hands dirty. He's always been a little bit undersized anyway. So maybe you'd want Elijah Roberts or Chris Braswell in there and sort of have them settle in as being the short yardage early down group. Diaby, Logan Hall, Vita Vea, Greg Gaines, and then Braswell or Roberts is sort of your base 3-4 defense on early downs and short yardage situations. And then your more pass rushing group, you have Diaby, Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey, and Hassan Reddick. I think it creates a really interesting rotation for the defensive staff. You like having the variety. And I think that it raises the floor of what this defensive line can be, but again, it doesn't really do much for the ceiling. You kind of want to see if Hassan Reddick gets back to like some high-level pass rusher and has like number 1 level pass rushing ability this year, then yeah, this group's going to be very dangerous. Or if you get a breakout year from Cansey or Logan Hall, fantastic. Maybe Braswell steps up in year 2 or Elijah Roberts in year 1. Maybe Greg Gaines really steps up his game as a pass rusher. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I think there's a lot of likely opportunity here, which could help raise the ceiling of what this group could be, but it requires a breakout. You're not just sort of coming in the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers, for example, come in, or even the New York Giants come in, where you have these top-level guys who, as long as they play up to what you're projecting them to be, you're fine. These guys need to break out and be more than what they are. Now, the linebackers are in a very similar situation. They're this really good group against the run, which is really the purpose you want them to have. You do worry about them in coverage. Now, they have Levante David, veteran of the team, who, has showed a couple signs of regression over the last couple of years. Not more than Bucs fans want to admit. Sorry to break it to you, but more than you guys would want to admit. I've been kind of right about him. I think he still delivers number one linebacker performances. I still think he's going to be the green dot guy. I'm not overly concerned about him being out there playing a little bit of zone and mostly being there to prevent the run at the second level, filling in the right gaps, using his football IQ to get there. I just worry about wear and tear at this point on Levante David, who's like in year 10, year 11? That's a lot of years for a linebacker that's been a 3-down linebacker his entire career. He gets targeted a lot in coverage. I think teams sort of started to figure that out. He did 107.5 passer rating when targeted, gave up 723 yards, targeted 88 times. It's a lot of times to get targeted. I think that needs to be something that's addressed, at least. Like, how do you get him out of those situations where teams are picking on him to that degree? Because that's a lot. That's a lot for a linebacker to get targeted. You don't see defensive backs get targeted that much. So they're getting situations on the offensive side of the ball where they're forcing Levante David to have to cover some pretty good players, and he's not doing a really good job at it. So you need to figure out a way to get him out of those scenarios. I don't think that happens with Anthony Walker, to be honest, because he's not great in that situation either. Maybe Servosia Dennis, from a coverage perspective, is just a little bit better than Levante David. He's probably the third overall linebacker on the team, just because I think Anthony Walker, from a traditional linebacker perspective, I think he can play the run really well once he's healthy and be a good number 2 option. But I think from more of a passing perspective, I would probably see maybe both these guys come off the field. Servosia Dennis goes onto the field as sort of like a lone dime linebacker in those scenarios, and that's what you get from there. It's tough. It's tough to say, because if the front four performs at a really high level, then the second level pass coverage sort of becomes more important, because the quarterback's getting his ball out of his hands a lot faster. So you need to be stuck on these linebackers and these running backs getting out of these routes early on, which I don't know that they necessarily have that here. So in a weird way, that kind of hurts them. When you have a great group, you need to be able to match up well against these tight ends. Now, maybe you drop safeties down to do that instead, but then you leave yourself vulnerable, where if these guys don't get home, now you're vulnerable over the top, and you're leaving your cornerbacks sort of hung out to dry here a bit. So overall, still good linebacker room for what a linebacker is supposed to be, which is primarily in the run game. That's where you need them to perform the most. I'm sure Todd Bowles is going to figure out ways to manipulate in the pass coverage situation to put these guys in positions to succeed. But if it ends up being like it was last year for Levante David, it could be a long year for this defense in terms of giving up in the short to intermediate levels in the passing game. And that could really hurt their overall defensive success. Now, these defensive backs is something where there's a lot of potential here, a lot of growth, and a lot of upside. We'll start with Jamel Dean, who's their number 1 corner. He's sort of sustained through the Sean Murphy Buntings and Carlton Davises coming through to be the real anchor of what is the 17th best coverage group for me. Very average in the run game, average physicality. In terms of man coverage, he didn't have it last year. This is not a man coverage team that you're going to want to see. This is a zone defense. primarily an exotic, aggressive, blitzing zone defense from Todd Bowles. Because when they primarily stood in zone coverage, it was an 81.5 passer rating. He only gave up 3 penalties. No touchdowns given up. Gave up some more receptions. I think naturally in zone coverage that's going to happen because you're primarily playing what's in front of you. But I think as a veteran player, he sort of has learned more often as the years have gone on that you still cover your man in zone coverage. You're not covering grass. And I think in zone coverage, you'll see guys, particularly younger guys, get stuck in that. And Jamel Dean's sort of past that. You'll see him catch it from time to time. But it does lend itself to give up more receptions. You're sort of just, again, you're letting it sort of, everything's sort of happening in front of you. You're sort of using the quarterback's eyes. You're identifying where the player is. And that's where you're trying to go and break up the passes. You know, when they play in the cover 3, that's where he's really great because he's got such good strides to him that he's able to keep up with more athletic wide receivers. And that's where primarily his pass breakups can occur. You'd like to see him be a bit more of a ball hawk, especially because they do play so much zone coverage. You would expect him to be able to maybe identify routes a little bit better, to be more effective in forcing turnovers. So I think that does kind of hold back his overall grade a little bit because you'd like to see him be able to do that. Then you got Zion McCollum, who's been a developmental guy, who, again, zone coverage, really good, horrific in man coverage. Now, if you look at Zion's season, those first couple weeks of the year, he was looking like he was breaking out as like one of the elite cornerbacks in the entire league. Then towards the middle of the year, he kind of just had a couple of stinkers in there where you're like, okay, this is the Zion that we remember from last year. And then as the season went on, he kind of moved back up into what this grade is here, which is like this, you know, a good number 2 corner with some potential. Because he did pretty well in his targets to receptions given up. You know, he was targeted a lot. He gave up a lot of yards, though. So when he was beat pretty bad. But he also did a great job playing super aggressive out there. 13 pass breakups, 4 touchdowns allowed, 2 interceptions. So his aggressiveness out there was paying dividends. But it was like he was basically playing corner the way Baker Mayfield was playing quarterback. Where the good was great and the bad was horrific. And unlike Baker Mayfield, there was more bad than good. There were some really bad games in there, which hopefully from what you saw from him towards the end of the year when he sort of started to get some more balance to his game, a little bit more consistency from drive to drive, from quarter to quarter, that's going to be what sustains him now moving forward, where he sort of is now able to harness that aggressiveness because he proved his eyes are really great. He was able to identify stuff, and more time in the film room, more time of understanding situationally what a team is going to be doing will also help prevent him from getting beat so badly like we saw from him in a couple of those games where the guy was as burnt toast as you could get. But man, when he was having those great games, it was hard to find anyone better in those games. So you want to get more of that and figure out how to get more of that out of him this season. From a nickel perspective, we just covered Houston, who lost their entire safety room the day after I posted it. But I think a lot of what I said about them stands here when I talk about Jalen Pittry and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I think a lot of that holds true here with Tyke Smith, who, you know, is kind of a safety, but he plays the nickel for this team. He's really aggressive, but he's a really strong nickel. But his ability to play safety, and him and Antoine Winfield Jr. basically playing the exact same position, the exact same role, even Christian Izien to a degree, but you get Antoine Winfield Jr., who last year undoubtedly had a down year in pass coverage when he was targeted. 127.1 passer rating. So of those 9 catches, 107 yards that he gave up, to allow 2 touchdowns in that scenario, that means that they were targeting you and you were giving it up. But, I mean, he did have, 400 plus other snaps where they weren't going at him at all, which says a lot. So he was on his game quite a bit. It's just those few moments when he wasn't, it was like, I said down year, sort of like from a passer rating perspective, like when he's targeted, but passer rating doesn't account for when you're not targeted at all. So he's still a great player. I am concerned that when he is targeted, that it's kind of the death of him. So it's kind of like he's either on the guy like glue, like white on rice, or he's non-existent and he's sort of lost out there, which is very rare. But it's really nice to have a guy like Winfield Jr. and Tyke Smith and Christian Izien, because you've sort of worked yourself now into a position where you're like that Baltimore defense where you got these 3 players, like when they had Hamilton and Williams and Geno Stone, where you can sort of float these guys around. It was mostly with Hamilton and Marcus Williams, and then like Marcus Williams and Geno Stone, they were like, who's playing deep in this coverage, and then you'd have Kyle Hamilton play a little bit closer to the line the way you would Tyke Smith. But then you have Christian Izien now, you have Antoine Winfield Jr., you have Tyke Smith. All 3 of those guys can be on the field. They could all sort of start in a general safety position. And it's going to be really difficult to identify where each of the guys are going to end up, because their skill sets allow them to play pretty much everywhere that a safety would play, whether it's a box safety or a traditional free safety role in the slot. Primarily, Tyke Smith will be the nickel, and primarily Izien and Winfield Jr. are going to be your safeties. But I think there's so much room for variety here, especially when you add 3 rookies at that, to your secondary through the draft and through undrafted free agency, like Ben Morrison, who pretty aggressive player. You worry about the injury, but him coming in as cornerback 4, maybe cornerback 5, because you got Jacob Parrish as well, who very similar in terms of his ability in the run and his physicality, just a little bit worse in coverage, you can anticipate. You got some depth there. You got some competition out there. If Zion McCollum resorts back to being this just horrific, terrible starting outside corner, you might have some options here. You even had Shiloh Sanders, who is, again, sort of this versatile guy, can play in the nickel, can play some safety, is coming in with a pretty good high IQ for football, just doesn't really have the athletic traits, but working hard in camp. Things are looking up for him there. So they got like a nice little group here that they've developed really well. Nice little mixture of veterans with some younger guys like McCollum and Smith and Morrison, Izien, Parrish, Kayvon Merriweather, Shiloh Sanders, with some more veteran types, Winfield Jr., Jamel Dean. You got Bryce Hall there as well, sort of like a sneaky special teams guy with some starting experience. So I look at this group the same way I'm sort of looking at their defensive line, where, they got their 2 stalwarts there, Dean and Winfield Jr., Diaby, Vita Vea. And then you have all these other guys that can sort of be put in these situations, that can be developed, mixed and matched in. I think that whoever the breakout star is here, you hope, I guess, that it's going to be Zion McCollum to raise everything up, because it's way better to have these 2 tremendous outside corners, kind of like what you just covered with Houston, because then you can just lock down 2 sides of the field, and then everything inside the numbers becomes just a crowded mess for opposing offenses, and that's where Winfield Jr. and Izien and Tyke Smith can just take over games at the third level, because that's where the ball's always going to go. And you just funnel everything inside, knowing that you can have these great one-on-one matchups on the outside that you're probably going to be winning more often than not. But that all comes with Zion McCollum stepping up and Jamel Dean not regressing. But again, it seems like I'm low on this group. But I think from a potential standpoint, they got probably the most potential that we've covered so far for exponential growth that can be so significant that it drastically improves the grade throughout the year. I think every other team that sort of has this weird potential in there, yeah, there's room to grow, but it's like a couple of spots. If Zion McCollum steps up and Tyke Smith sort of maintains what he did last season, you could be looking at closer to a top 10 group, which would just drastically change what this defense is going to be able to do. And it will allow Todd Bowles to do what he really loves to do, which is just harass offenses with exotic blitzes and stunts and twists and blitzing defensive backs and blitzing linebacker, like all that stuff. If it allows Todd Bowles to open up his game the way that he really likes to from a strategic and play calling standpoint, then that does take this team to the next level. That sort of right now you're sort of looking like, are they capable of doing it? That's the one way that they really can do that. But they are coming in 24th, which I know, weird. They're tied for 13th in run defense, 23rd in pass defense, just because they're sort of just hovering there and like that below average in every group because lacking the upside. High floor, low ceiling right now for a lot of what this defense is giving. Through their schedule here, they have the 19th strength of schedule, 19th hardest schedule, 9.5 wins, Vegas over under. I got them going over. I look at the fact that the division they're in, sweeping Atlanta, sweeping New Orleans, worst case scenario, splitting with Carolina. It's 5 wins. I feel like it's 5 wins right out the gate. Then you get the Jets early in the year. You get Arizona at home. So right away, you're kind of handed 7. You got 7 wins right now on the docket. And the only game I'm really looking at where I'm going like, this is the game they're just going to be overmatched in is being on the road in Buffalo. But they catch Philadelphia at home. They catch San Francisco at home. And they get New England at home. Now, New England, I'm a lot higher on than other people. So maybe I'm so wrong on them that that's actually a walkaway win. They get Seattle. They get Seattle on the road, though. They get Miami. They get Miami on the road, though. So that makes those games a little bit dicier. But I think the schedule really falls in their favor. I think also when your division is this winnable, it's going to take a lot for them to not just get 9 wins pretty easily. If everything goes right, they're kind of there at 9 wins. And I think there's enough here. There's enough wiggle room here with some of these other teams that 10 wins, a 10-7 record is as much of a slam dunk as you could get, as long as they stay healthy, of course. So overall, my 12th ranked team, 19th head coach, 4th ranked offense, 24th ranked defense. Of all the teams, I do feel like I've said it multiple times, they are the ultimate high floor, low ceiling team coming in. Their floor and their ceiling are basically almost as identical as it gets.
And there it is, my number 12 team, my 2025 NFL Deep Dive Series, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video next time.